still with Pierre Trudeau, your travels with Trudeau after he was out of office could almost be a separate book. Was what is something about him that you think most biographers miss?
That is a really perceptive question. They miss the underlying Jesuitical education that made him understand power. One of the things that he did that is usually missed is his distance, his understanding of how distance accumulates power. Uh, I say in the book, he had three great friends that came with him to Ottawa, Peltier, Marchand, and Hebert. They were all part of his intellectual circle in Montreal. And he used them and appointed them. But once he became prime minister, there was a distance between him and them. They were not buddies anymore. They were part of the team, but they were no longer buddies. And he had no buddies. And the idea that you could get close to Pierre in a personal and familiar way it wasn't the case. Pierre had the distance of power, understood the distance of power. The second thing, and again, this question really stimulates me. The second thing is that Pierre didn't answer questions that were asked for superficial answers. When he was challenged by media or the opposition and so on, he would go underneath the question and look at its motivation, what the philosophers call the inarticulate major premise. Why are you asking that question? Not what is the question, but why are you asking that question? And that was devastating to people who asked him questions, because he put the question back to them with a kind of tone of accusation. You're trying to do X as the inarticulate premise of that question. Well, let's debate why you're trying to do X. I will tell you, John, I watched this man with fascination. He was an incredibly interesting personality.
Now, an eye-opening moment in the book, for me at least, was learning how Expo 86 may not have come to pass without your lobbying for federal funding. And it's interesting as well because, as you point out, the Trudeau government in those days certainly wasn't in a mood to do Premier Bill Bennett and the Socreds any favors. So how close was BC to pulling the plug on the World's Fair then?
Well, Bill Bennett told me without a certain level of federal participation, he couldn't afford it. So he was cornered, and the federal Liberals, as I say in my book, the cabinet said basically, we haven't elected a single MP in the 1980 election. Why would we spend money in British Columbia? Let's put money where people support us. But the short end of this is that I had to fight off all the Liberal decisions in cabinets against supporting beyond a certain amount. There was about 100 million that would be put on the table, but it wasn't enough. Wouldn't build a Canadian host pavilion, wouldn't pay a lot of the operations. So I went to Bennett and I said, Bennett, Premier Bennett, I've done the econometric work, at least my staff has, and you definitely need pump priming by the federal government. And he said, well, I'll go forward with it if you can do the deal. But, I talked to Trudeau myself and he turned me down. So that was the hill to climb. And as I say in the book, I went to the Prime Minister and said to him, there's no Liberal Party if it is so obvious that we don't care about British Columbia, that we don't do our role. We don't carry out our role in this important pump priming project for British Columbia. And again, we had a huge debate in cabinet. I was appealing, being turned down 3 times. and he didn't call the decision. And I suddenly realized that I had a chance to talk to him personally, and I followed that up. And he didn't tell me where he stood after the discussion, but at the next priorities and planning meeting, the executive cabinet meeting, when the item came up, he simply said, I've looked at this issue and I've decided to go forward. Jack will be the federal minister for Expo 86, and we'll see what he can do.
And today, those legacies from the federal level, at least, are Canada Place and the Pan Pacific.
Correct. The Canada Place, with its 4 functions, really, it was the host pavilion. Today, it is a cruise ship receiving terminal. It is the Pan Pacific Hotel. It's an office building and a convention center. So it changed. These people of Vancouver couldn't get access to the inner harbor. CP had the rail there, but there was no access. So one of our objectives was to create a project where people could actually come into the inner harbor, walk around Canada Place, see it, also create an iconic image for Vancouver, something like Sydney and the famous opera house there. It was a brilliant project. The people that I brought together did an incredible job of creating the concept and executing it, building the project.